Thank you for choosing the Setfords podcast, Open Matters, with me, your host, Eric Woolard-White. In this episode, we're looking at AI and how it may affect the legal industry, and in particular, how it might affect Setfords and our consultants. We're also going to be talking to an unsung hero within the business who works behind the scenes so you can see a little bit more about what they do. And we're also going to play a round of what's in your backpack. So stay tuned, let's dive in. So, Sonal Rabheru.
Yeah.
Have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes.
Good, I'm glad about that. You are a senior consultant residential property solicitor at Setfords.
Yeah.
That is quite the job title, but it feels like you deserve it. You're clearly absolutely smashing your practice area. So welcome to the Setfords podcast.
Thank you.
We're just going to have a little chat today about, the work that you do, how you kind of organise your working day, your working week.
Okay.
A little bit about being a consultant.
Yeah.
Something about an award that you won recently. Okay. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But I thought I'd start with, how long have you been at Setfords?
So I have been with Setfords just over, 4 years now.
And how did you find us?
So I was a Guildford-based solicitor anyway, so I knew Setfords from when they first started a long time ago. And when I chose to leave my previous firm, I didn't want to make a sideways move. I just wanted to do something a bit different because at that point in time, I was almost considering stopping being a conveyancer at all, actually. So I looked into the Setfords model. I had a few meetings with Guy and it took off from there, really.
So Guy Setford, our CEO, was he sort of quite charismatic when you met him?
Yeah, he was actually really lovely. He wasn't pushy at all. He was just very much, this is what we do, this is how we do it. I think you'd be a good fit. But, take your time making a decision because I know it can be a really sort of life-changing move. And it's obviously quite a bold move to make because you're going into self-employment. So he answered a lot of questions that I had.
Yeah.
And answered them really well.
And is it the first time that you've sort of worked for yourself? Was that the first sort of step you've taken into, I guess, almost being like an entrepreneur, I suppose? Yeah,
it really was. Yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking at the time.
And had you ever sort of imagined you were effectively running your own business, although, you're supported by Setfords, you're out there doing your own thing?
Yeah, you really are. Yeah, I think at the time I didn't feel I was ready for that. And Guy was very much, no, you will become a consultant and not employed by Setfords. And I was like, okay. But at the time, I didn't realise that I was probably really ready to set up my own business. But I was very, I lacked a lot of confidence, I would say, at the time.
And how do you feel now on the confidence?
Oh, I'm totally
You're flying,
yeah.
Yeah, I can tell.
The opposite end of the spectrum now, yeah.
Having met you before, I can tell you really are. So give us some idea and paint a picture for us, if you will, of your sort of typical day, week as a consultant solicitor. There might be people listening to this who don't do that yet, but might be thinking about it. What's your
I think because you're self-employed, you still have to remain very focused and you still have to work to some form of timetable. Well, I certainly do. I'm that type of person. So I'm still very much, up at a certain time every day, at my desk by 9 a.m. in the morning, take a lunch break, take a few breaks here or there. And I continue till the work is done, if you like. So there's no typical day because you're just, I've got quite a big caseload. So I am constantly answering emails and the phone all day. And then in the evening, I tend to look at my title reviews and things like that. So it's whatever works for you, but that seems to work very well for me.
Do you find time for yourself in that?
I do. So I make sure I take, a break at lunchtime and I go out for a walk and, I make sure I do that every day apart from when it's chucking it down with rain. So I do make sure I do that. And in the morning, because I don't travel to work anymore, I do a little workout in the morning. So I do try and make time for myself in the day. I think it's important to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And conveyancing is, we've all kind of moved houses and kind of had to do that. It's quite laborious work, isn't it? For those that don't know.
Yeah, it is. And it's quite stressful as well because you're dealing with stressy clients and you're dealing with agents that are always pushing you to try and get to exchange. So you do need to manage. I think if you're on top of your work, you can manage that quite well. But if you take on too much, that's when you'll fall into problems.
And you're often meeting people, aren't you, who are making a big old life decision. You know, they say buying a house and selling a house is like one of the most stressful things you can do, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And so how do you sort of manage that? What's your way of dealing with those kinds of customers, clients?
I think it's always about communication. As long as your clients can get hold of you, that takes the stress away for them, because there are so many stories you hear where people can't get hold of their lawyer or they don't answer their emails. And I think as long as you are contactable and you provide some kind of update to your client, then it's fine. I don't often get a problem with clients saying that I haven't answered or they can't get hold of me.
It sounds like, just from the way you describe your working day, you're very on it, you're very organised.
Yes, yeah.
Your to-do
But I
list.
also have a team. So I've got two assistants that I have as well. So to be honest, I couldn't do my work if I didn't have my team as well, who are also helping me in the background.
So you really are a kind of a little,
It's a business within a business, yeah.
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 No, that's good.
Yeah.
So do you think then that plays into how come you got shortlisted and won Consultant Conveyancer of the Year at the British Conveyancing Awards?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, so they actually said at the awards that I epitomised a modern conveyancer. And I'd like to think that is exactly what I am, because I've embraced technology. So I use a lot of social media. I've got my own Instagram account. I use LinkedIn quite a lot. And I've got lots of, client reviews that I've put up on social media to, win more work. I've got lots of local links with estate agents, and I make sure that I market myself and, I'm out there communicating and marketing with the estate agents as well.
So you're using that sort of technology to kind of build and grow your network?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because if people don't know what you do or who you are, then they're not going to use you. You're no different to anybody else. Whereas if they can see client reviews for yourself, then it makes it easier for them to choose who they want to use for their own house transaction.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be with you at the awards event when you won your award. It was a wonderful moment. It was a wonderful moment for me, actually.
Yeah.
We're on our table.
Yeah.
It's always great when, someone right next to you picks up an award.
Yeah.
How did that moment feel for you?
It was amazing. It was so nice just to be recognised in the profession as someone who stands out. Yeah. I think for years, you work away and you work really hard and people say you're really good at what you do, but to finally be recognised in the profession was amazing for me. Yeah, I'm really blessed.
And so is that something that you entered, or did we enter on your behalf? How did that actually come about? Do you know?
I think Setfords put me forward for the award, and then I didn't hear anything of it until I got shortlisted. So
then it sort of goes quiet.
And then it all went from there.
Yeah, that lovely event.
Yeah.
So in terms of, how that, playing back into your kind of working life while you chose to be a consultant, what is it about consultancy that you really like? And if you were to describe it to someone else who was sort of teetering on the brink of becoming a consultant, what would you say to them are the best bits about that type of work?
Best bits for me are the fact that you don't have a target. So in a traditional law firm, you're told how much you ought to try and bill per month or year. So you don't have that. So you've taken that pressure away of how much you need to bill. Also, you don't need to time record. So every 6 minutes of your time needs to be recorded. And you had to record a certain amount of hours per day. And it's amazing how much you realise you're under pressure when you've taken that away and those elements away. Plus, I managed a team. So again, that has been taken away from me as well, and a department. So I would say you've just got complete autonomy over how much or how little you want to do. And that's the best thing about consultancy. I've chosen to be quite busy, but you don't have to be. You could do fairly little if you wanted to, and still be quite lucrative in what you're doing. Yeah.
I mean, that's good to hear. I'm sure everyone wants to be in control of their own earning power. In terms of support then, because, we sort of touched on this kind of setting up a business and being an entrepreneur, that can be really, really scary for some people.
Yeah.
What's the sort of the support framework here like? How would you describe that?
So I would say my success is down to Setfords as well, and them being as much of a team and part of the business. So I would say that's because, so they've got a marketing team here. They've helped me very much in the marketing that I do. You've got the business development department here that can refer some work to you if you're struggling at the beginning. You've also got, obviously, the IT side of things, admin who scan your post on for you every day. So there's a whole wraparound service. So if you were to own your own business, you'd have to do all those other things on top of your day job. So if all you want to do is your day job, like me, I just want to be a conveyancer, you're allowed to do that because you haven't got to worry about all the other aspects of the business.
And that means you can kind of concentrate more on your time with
on
clients.
My actual work that I want to do, yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great advert for being a consultant to me. Sonal, we have this little bit in terms of our podcast. So we've kind of chatted a little bit seriously about you and what you do in your reward, etc.
Yeah.
But we want to play a little game with you now.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Yeah.
Our game is called What's in Your Backpack?
Okay.
And the idea there is a backpack is a sort of a symbol, if you like, of remote working.
Okay.
Setfords are champions, as you know, of remote working. And so we thought we would take that symbol and ask you for 3 things that you wouldn't be able to live without in your backpack. You may not have a backpack. You look way too fashionable for a backpack. But whatever you use to kind of carry around your stuff.
Yeah.
So 2 of them can be, sort of day-to-day things, but don't get confined in that. They can be really interesting or exciting or different.
Yeah.
And one of them, imagine your backpack's like a TARDIS. So there's no kind of size confinement to it. You could have something luxurious, something aspirational, something very big that may not necessarily fit in a backpack, but something you kind of might think symbolises, remote working. So 3 things. What's in your backpack? Go.
Okay, so apart from the usual computer and phone,
That's already in there.
That's already in there.
That. Good point.
I'd always have a notebook and pen.
A notebook and pen.
I like to write things down.
You do sound really organised.
I know. I am that person.
That's great. That's probably why you win awards.
So a notebook and a pen, and I'd always have a lipstick.
What colour?
It would be quite a nude colour.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that sounds really dull and boring, so I should really think of something like...
No. Lipstick's good.
More than that.
So, yeah, your 3rd thing can be kind of anything, really. Helpful hint. Favourite car.
I'd have a nice sports car. I'd go with like a nice Porsche or something.
A Porsche.
Yeah.
What colour would that Porsche be?
Oh, it would be black.
Black.
Yeah.
Soft top, hard top.
Let's go soft top.
Soft top.
Yeah.
And where would you imagine yourself driving?
Somewhere
Porsche?
really like hot country.
Hot country.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Roof down.
Yeah.
Music on.
Yeah.
Any idea what's playing on the radio?
Oh.
I think I saw you dance to some disco.
Probably.
We
Probably a bit of Ed Sheeran or something.
Okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
So we've got notebook and pen.
Yeah.
A lipstick.
Yeah.
Not more of a kind of a natural colour.
Yeah.
A black soft top Porsche driving on a sun-kissed road with Ed Sheeran
pretty classy.
blurring out the speakers. That's great. If that's what's in your backpack, that's absolutely fine for us. Sonal, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up now on Open Matters, we're about to talk to an unsung hero to find out how their work supports our consultants. So Sarah Jones.
Hi.
Senior graphic designer at Setfords.
I am, yes.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome to the Setfords podcast.
Thank you.
We call this bit Unsung Heroes. You are today's unsung hero.
That's cool.
We try and find someone around the company who does a job for consultants that consultants may not necessarily see. You probably do meet consultants at some point, but just for the purpose of people listening in or watching in fact as well. What do you do, and how would consultants interact with you on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you. Yes, I am the senior graphic designer, and I do lots of artwork, mainly for the consultants, but I also do like lots of different event pieces for them. The consultants would interact with me when they are looking to promote themselves from a digital side through social media, or at an event where they would need pull-up banners, or they're looking to have a networking session, and they would come through to me and ask if I can have some flyers, what can they discuss and what can they give out, whether it would be merchandise or it would be something to promote their details and their services specifically. We'll have a conversation, have a brainstorm, and just see what we can come up with.
That sounds good. That sounds like a really good resource for consultants and they may not necessarily know, I suppose, how they get in touch with marketing. So how do they find their way to you?
Yeah, so they would either speak to a colleague of mine, Sam Beckford, or they can email Setfords Marketing, and they can just ask their request through that, and then we'll get back in touch with them. It is a really good resource because not everybody knows how to work with a designer, and they also get confused of like all the printing side, but we take care of that, and we just kind of say, this is what you can get at this price, or this is what we can do for you in the timescale that you've done. So we work with their timelines and do the best we can, what we can achieve in that time.
And so we are focused on really kind of providing the design support.
Yes.
When it comes to, and then they would take a finished file, for example,
Yep.
and then they can kind of find somewhere locally, presumably, if they want to get that printed and choose the quantity that they need. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a couple of options. So they can print it themselves. Some of our consultants do have good relationship with printers, which is great. We can provide the print ready artwork and they can just print it however many they want to do it. Or they can come through us. We've got a number of suppliers and we'll just get it sent to them directly or at a location that's convenient for them. So we literally take the pain points of the confusion of how do we print, how do I get this to work, and things like that most commonly would come up.
Yeah.
And we take that away from them.
Yeah, so they're lawyers busy lawyering. They don't have to worry about the marketing and the designing. We take that away from them.
Yeah, they're the experts in their practices and what they do, and we're the experts in what we can do, so we can provide as much needed support however way it works for them. And that's why we have the first consultant conversations with them to say, what is it that you're looking for? What's your end goal? So then we can provide the best experience that they need, because also if they don't need it, or they may think they need it, but actually it may be a waste of time and effort and money from every party involved, that it's just better not to.
You can give them some advice on what's best to do.
Yeah, just to know where they are going with it.
And so what's the strangest thing you've been asked to design for a consultant? What sticks in your mind?
I mean, they're pretty standard requests, flyers, pull-up banners. I think the weirdest one was a roundabout sign that I had come through, and I was a bit like, okay, it's unusual. It's obviously available. It's just something that is not an everyday piece, which is fantastic because it gives us a challenge to actually think what information needs to be on, and we can work with a consultant and say, actually, you can't have all this information because you don't have the size, but we'll work with them to find the best solution that works for everybody.
So you like a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It brings out the creativity, and sometimes when you are just working with one singular brand, it can be repetitive.
Yeah.
But when we're working with the consultants and their different challenges and their different needs, that's where we can actually use our skills to think of something that, again, we know what the end goal result is, and we can help, in theory, help them get there more leads.
Well, that's good. That's good. Anyone listening in then from a consultant perspective, roundabout signs or anything more interesting.
Yeah.
You heard it here. Send them in. Yeah,
we can pretty much do anything that is required. Like we've had a request for teardrop banners, feather banners, which is great. Because again, it's a bit of a challenge on the sizing, but anything, whether it will be a networking event or physical event, we're there to help.
Cool. Just before we leave this chat, just tell us a little bit about how you got into graphic design. What sort of inspired you there?
To be honest, my first branding project when I was in secondary school, I think it was the highest grade that I got, and I was really proud. It was an A*. And I was normally like C's and B's. So the fact that I got an A*, I was like, this is impressive. And then I just kind of carried on with that branding style and become a bit of a brand expert, and actually looking at how people interact with messaging from a visual point of view actually gives me a little little bit of joy and pride in the fact that someone's got a lead from something that I've created.
Yeah.
I fell into IT for a bit, and that can be a really mundane practice. And so working with those challenges has kind of helped me go through into law to make it fun and informative in the right way.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, look, we're really glad to have you here, Sarah.
Thank you.
And thank you for being today's Unsung Hero.
Thank you.
We're turning our attention now to the big subject in this edition of Open Matters, artificial intelligence and machine learning. Please stay with us. Well, welcome to the Setfords podcast. Antony O'Loughlin, Head of Litigation at Setfords. Pearl Moses, Director of Compliance at Setfords.
Hello.
You've joined us for a conversation about the big topic at the moment, certainly within the business and definitely outside of it, AI. Mm-hmm. We can't have missed them, huge amounts of headlines about this, lots being written about it, lots being said. The Times last week, in fact, in which you were quoted, Pearl, the headline was "Lawyers fear that ChatGPT will threaten jobs." There's a lot of fear and scaremongery around jobs with any new technology, but ChatGPT seems to have really kind of raised it to a new level. A headline personally which I took to heart is the fact that the major regional newspaper group, NewsQuest, are hiring AI-powered reporters. Who knows what they look like? 30 years ago, I would have applied for that. BBC have been talking about AI anxiety. And I read somewhere about a Goldman Sachs piece of research that suggests that AI could replace 300 million full-time jobs. It didn't give a timeline, but that's quite a lot. So I'm assuming it's quite a while. So lots to discuss, lots to kind of think about in terms of where we sit in the world, in the legal industry, and also for our consultants too. So, Pearl, you've just had an article published in Business Vision, BV magazine, and you kind of sort of start off in there with the kind of where do we stand? I mean, where do we stand?
Oh, Eric, thank you. I think it's interesting. Probably just jump on what you said about the different headlines and the ramping up, if you like, of terror and fear and anxiety, and just say that it's funny because almost 10 years now, we've been having these "will robots replace lawyers" style headlines. And as you say, it has ramped up somewhat with the existence of what you might call more intuitive technology. So AI, the whole artificial intelligence, AI appearing to be able to do what you might say a thinking lawyer could do. But I think that one of the things that's important to say is that AI is not all rubbish. And then again, neither is it all that. Because I say not all rubbish because there is stuff it does which we should just really be grateful it is doing. I think if you studied law anything in the last, 10, 15 years, and you've been a trainee or a junior lawyer and you've had to do that real grunt research and drafting and repeating templates and things, you're probably thinking, yes, result, that type of thing, unless of course that's a role that you were aspiring to. And then you're thinking, good grief, what's going to happen now? What am I going to get to do? Will I still be able to get in? So there is some benefit to AI. There is stuff that AI can do around template drafting, around document repetition, that sort of stuff that, quite frankly, we need it to do, and it does it better than a person, let's tell the truth. But I suppose the other bit we need to be thinking about is, does it do what I would call the real law, which is the real thinking about what the law means, how it's applied? You see, AI to some extent at this point can, dare I say, regurgitate what it is given, and quite sensibly up to a point. It's interesting to see how much it can do when you make it more dynamic. I mean, one of my favorite things to do has always been legal scenarios, but making them dynamic. So if you add a factor, if you change a factor, to what extent can it still play at the level that I suspect we would need it to play? When you look at things like the various pilots that have been done around things like Harvey, chat, they'll tell you that the minute you change certain elements, the responses become, shall we say, perhaps less effective in terms of what you might present to your managing partner or your board as you're thinking on a particular subject or topic.
What sort of weight does it kind of add to your role from a compliance perspective?
Well, I think from our perspective, it is that piece that we're always saying is we really want people to, it's just going to sound almost sound as though we're trying to teach people suck eggs, but we really want people to do their own thinking. We really want people to do their own risk assessment, their own analysis, risk analysis, ongoing. And we don't want people to almost lean on a tool. You know, we are in an industry where we have a lot of third-party stakeholders. We've got regulators, we've got ombudsmen, we've got commissioners, and they will always say, whatever tool you're buying, you can't outsource your responsibility, your discretion, to exercise your discretion.
Yeah.
So we don't want people to suddenly think, I can do that, therefore I don't have to. So I think to that extent, we want to be really confident that even if we were to buy any of these toys, that people aren't outsourcing the good stuff that is the reason why we have them in the first place.
So if we do buy some of those toys, as Pearl says, Anthony, in your world of litigation, you've got a broad legal experience. What do you reckon is going to land in your inbox in terms of, potential challenges around AI?
Yeah, I think AI in the sort of litigation world presents probably quite a few challenges, quite a few opportunities. I think, as Pearl says, I think AI, I don't personally think of AI as being able to take the sort of analytical thought out of the role of the lawyer. I think that particularly with an area like litigation where a lot of case analysis and sort of ongoing analysis is required, I think AI is likely to be a tool to help to facilitate that with the lawyer rather than taking the role on itself. I think if lawyers were to become too dependent on AI for that sort of analytical thinking, that's where I think we might run into issues. It's the same, I guess, with the sort of judicial element. So I think, again, I can see AI becoming a really effective tool for the judiciary. What I can't see it doing is taking over, because I can't imagine a machine being able to give that kind of nuanced analytical thought that a real judge, living person could do. Already, as Pearl said, so I think this is not a sort of technology in the realm of litigation. It's not a new thing. For example, we've had the disclosure platform has been being developed for many years and is a really effective tool for complicated disclosure exercises where you have millions of documents, different types of documents. You've got to do very sophisticated filtering and sort of algorithm work. These platforms have been absolutely invaluable there and have really changed that element of the litigation process. And I think AI could benefit that even more. So I think in terms of sort of using it as a tool, as an aspect of the litigation process, I think it could be fantastic. I think the danger that I would see is if people started to become too dependent on that machine-powered thinking and removed the sort of analytical thought and the nuance and the sort of emotional intelligence at times of the litigator, who is there to cut through whatever dispute is in play, cut through that sort of and see things in quite a rational, emotionally intelligent way, which I can't imagine a machine. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one day they will, but
I think you're picking up on the fact that there's the human touch.
Yes.
I think you mentioned the word nuance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a difficult thing to program.
Yes.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
In terms of sort of day-to-day life, I know certainly in my role we've played around with ChatGPT certainly. Have you had a go? What have you tried sort of looking at with AI in respect to maybe your work?
I think one of the things that we had a look at was a couple of ethical scenarios, and just to have a sense of what would the machine tell us was the right thing to do or not to do. We tended to do a lot of, in the past, brown bag lunch style things with people and say, okay, you drive your car out of a car wash or out of a car park and you hit the mirror off of another car. What happens next? Sort of thing. And just play out how many scenarios, what will it tell you to do next? Do you get those sort of human responses around, was there CCTV? Or do you get those responses around it? Definitely the law says. And it's quite interesting that very often with chat, what you get is almost the formulaic, this is what you should be doing legally. What you don't necessarily get is, well, actually, I do that because someone knocked the mirror off my sister's car, and that's why I'm doing the right thing. So it's quite interesting when you begin to move into that arena of where the human being comes in. What do you actually get? And I think ultimately you may be able to get a number of variants, but I always think, we used to say in the old days, garbage in, garbage out. But also I think more importantly in this particular tool, and I talk about it a little bit in the piece, is about the danger of biases. Because you can get biased responses.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned, bias in gets bias out, exactly as you say. Have you had a go at drafting anything?
Well, we've used chat to try and to sort of comment on drafting. So for example, we had one of my team drafted a letter of claim, gave it to chat and asked it to comment on how to sort of make it more effective as a letter. And it did do that very well. I thought it sort of suggested kind of more detail in certain parts. You think about sort of providing more evidence here, that sort of thing, making sort of grammatical suggestions. So I think as a tool as a sort of fine tuner, it is absolutely valuable. And I can imagine that sort of being rolled out a lot more comprehensively in the legal world as a sort of like a tool. I'm thinking of like a sort of tool in music production where you might have a processing tool that like a mastering tool that just refines the creative sound that you've created and kind of perfects it and suggests ways in which the sound could be made slightly better and more perfected. I can imagine that in the legal world as well with things like drafting. Again, I'm coming back to my earlier point, I guess. What I can't imagine is the actual creation of the kind of creative aspect being taken over. But certainly it was interesting to play around with chat.
I think we're always going to come back to, aren't we, the human intervention?
Yes.
The moral compass, the conscience, the nuance. Again, I think, absolutely right. Sorry, Paul.
No, I was agreeing with you, but then I was also thinking, because it does play into, as you say, a lot of the terror behind the headlines is it going to replace me? That's really what it is, isn't it? It's what is it going to do to me? What is it going to do to the industry that I want to join? And I was just reflecting on what we were saying and thinking as Antony was talking about how important it will be for people to understand how to use technology properly. Because it's one thing, there's so many analogies out there. I mean, we're both wearing these watches, not that we want to necessarily try and sell the brand, but the point being that, with them, most of them can do so many functions, and most people probably know how to use how to either get their email or maybe do the time. But there's so much more. And I think there is something around how it will teach people what legal technology can do so that they bring them to it when they're using it. So they're not limited to just what it can do, but they can actually creatively interrogate it. And I think one of the best examples I've got is I have a nephew who's like literally a math genius. And the other day, my brother, who is much older than my nephew, obviously, and also a math genius, asked him something about, please forgive me because I'm probably going to get this all wrong, but it was something to do with a logbook or a four-square table or something like that. And my nephew goes, what is that? And my brother goes, well, it's the way we did it before we had all these calculators and whatever. And my nephew looks at him and starts to say, how old are you? But then my brother says, okay, and he gives him his example of this whole series of numbers and asks him, so what's the this of that? My nephew's like, oh, hang on, let me get my calculator. My brother goes, that's the answer. And my nephew goes, wow, how did you do that? You know, and it's just suddenly you realize that there's a whole skill set in the human head that is almost lost by the fact that we now just pick up a calculator and do it. And once upon a time, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm not good at math. I can't pretend to once upon a time have been able to do it, but I did have friends who could. And I feel that this sort of tech reminds me of that if we can teach people how to really understand it, really interrogate it, it could be a game changer. And so nobody should be worried. Read up, learn, understand. There's a real role in that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in good company here with the maths, I can tell you that for a fact. The point you made, I think, is, you know, some jobs will go, but then new jobs we don't know about yet will be created. And I think that's definitely the way to think about it. Just sort of thinking very much about our consultants, our Setfords consultants. How do you feel this may affect them? And also what role does Setfords has in the process of support for them around new technology, but AI specifically?
Well, I mean, I think if you're a Setfords consultant, and I'm going to sound biased here, you are already ahead of the game. And part of the reason for that is quite simply because, I mean, God, please, I'm going to say, is it being recorded? I know it's being recorded, but we don't really take on baby lawyers. Our model is about real expertise, and it's about people who really have got their stripes, cut their teeth, they know their stuff. So they are people who are already in the forefront. And then they joined a firm like Setfords, where tech is our daily bread. We love tech. You know, not everybody does. There are many dinosaurs out there. And so they're already in an environment where the way they do their day job is tech-enabled. So it's a win-win. So you've got expertise coming together with technology already happening, and the opportunity to just really be industry leaders, game changers. I mean, frankly, part of the reason I was even writing about this stuff is because it's what we're thinking about, it's what we're living. So we're almost kind of thinking, living, doing, breathing already. And so for our consultants, it only gets better. And we've got people every day saying, have you thought about this? What about our app? How do we make this work? And we have experts in all our areas of law. So we can actually not just contribute to, but we can drive the agenda in some of the fields of law.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree we're in the driving seat on this one. Antony, you're obviously hot off the heels of doing a course, a webinar, I believe. And so do you feel there's AI topics to come for you in that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I want to sort of do a series of training talks on hot topics, I guess is a good phrase, and certainly technology. Technology is obviously a huge thing now. So I've just come from educational. I've spent a few years teaching in the law school, and legal tech is a huge part of the sort of legal educational curriculum now. It's absolutely compulsory. I think it's a very valuable, a really hugely valuable thing a skill to acquire. I think it will be hugely in demand. And exactly as Pearl says, I think what will really be in demand is people that can use the tools so effectively and creatively that they can really make them sing and make them really use them to our aid. That's where the real value is going to be. And I think, you know, one of the things that was really impressed me about this firm is the technology projects that we've got. You know, we really are investing a huge amount, I think, in developing technologies to assist our consultants and to help the legal process. And I think that's only going to increase and become more valuable as the technology starts to develop. You know, I think we as a firm will be absolutely at the forefront of this ever-expanding world of legal technology.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we joined around about the same time. One of the big attractions for me was the technology discussion as part of the interview process, and looking at where where things can go. It's very exciting. And what interested me more is Setford's been at this for a while. Technology's been absolutely front of mind, as you say, number one agenda item. But, there's been a project within the company for 3 years, a knowledge transfer partnership with Innovate UK and the City of London University, with our team here looking at how AI can perhaps inform and change the client journey when they're seeking legal advice and trying to find a lawyer to help them. That, for me, is really exciting. So it's nothing new for us. We've already got good knowledge on it. And, I think what you're saying is we still need that human touch. We still need that interpretation and that understanding of where it can go. We still need to tell people how we can help them with it. And I think we all agree, Setfords will keep on doing that, and we'll all be playing our part in that along with the rest of our colleagues here. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say absolutely, and we will also be part of pushing the boundaries and seeing where those boundaries really lie, because we're talking about issues around data, issues around privacy, issues around confidentiality. There's quite a lot that goes into, at the moment, it's toys. But once it becomes a real commercially effective tool, we'll start to have conversations around, actually, did I say you could use my data like that? And I think those conversations are going to be equally exciting. There's a whole area of law for people to study up and become experts in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, we've scratched the surface a little bit. We will revisit this topic again and again. I'm sure it's not going away. Anthony, Pearl, thank you so much for joining us today on the Setfords podcast. This is actually our first podcast we've ever done, and so we will have you back for sure if you will be happy to join us again. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Finally, now on Open Matters, let's take a little look back at Setford's history and also where the company might be heading in the future. Mike Brawley, Operations Director at Setfords.
Indeed.
Welcome to the Setfords podcast.
I'm very excited. It's a new part of our journey.
It is a very new part of our journey. So new, in fact, this is Ep.1.
Yep.
And so what I'd quite like from you is, because you're a very established member of the Setfords team,
Yep.
Been with the firm for a long time, which is great. We love loyalty at Setfords. I wondered if you could just give us a potted history of the company from its early days to where we've got to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, Setfords was set up by Guy Setford, and his cousin Chris joined very shortly thereafter. Started up as a property practice, but with designs and aspirations on being something much different to that. And the firm has gone from there to take on consultancy, which is it's definitely more established now, but back in 2006 it was virtually unheard of. There were a few people having stabs at it, but
what was the trigger, do you think, for that sort of idea to venture off in? I mean, at the time that must have been a really new direction to travel in. What was the sort of the process that kicked that off?
Well, I think that Chris and Guy have always believed that law could just be done better. Essentially, I think that there was an alternative way of doing it that was more rewarding for the lawyers, both perhaps financially and intrinsically, and giving the lawyers the opportunity to get more from their career in a different way.
And that different way, what is it? What is it that attracts a consultant to this style of working?
I always think that Setfords gives the opportunity. There's something for everyone. It gives you the opportunity to design your career, grow your career, shape your career, take it the direction you want to take it. We're not there saying, right, traditional, we need 3 times your salary, we need your desk at probably not 9 a.m, probably 8 a.m, and you can leave once it gets really, really dark. That isn't how we operate. It gives people the opportunity to say, I want to look after my clients in the best way possible for me, and that might be that it might be shorter hours concentrated on a niche number of clients, or it might be traditional hours. Again, probably giving them the chance to choose who they want to take on as clients and how they want to give those clients the best service possible.
So we're offering more control over your career, freedom by the sounds of it, and flexibility. Was there a sort of a kicker, do you think, around that sort of time of the pandemic when this model, maybe became more attractive because everyone kind of got used to working remotely? Did that have an impact on the business?
Yeah, I would say so, yes. I mean, we'd become established anyway. We were a household name in the legal industry as it was. But what it made, what it definitely had the opportunity to do was people who perhaps liked the idea but hadn't worked at home, so they didn't know how they were going to react to that, and perhaps thought, well, I like the office environment, or that everyone was forced to work at home. They all went home, and lots of people came out the other side and said, actually, that is really good. This is brilliant. And so not only do I get to spend more time with my family and doing things that I enjoy, but I can actually provide the best service to my clients, and the clients are really looked after, but I'm doing it from home. So I think that for a lot of people, it was a real turning point, a real vision change, something that they felt, I can do this and I can see all the benefits of it, and it didn't any longer feel like a huge leap.
And do you think, obviously, you mentioned sort of Guy and Chris, obviously the co-CEOs, the founders of the business. Was there a vision, do you think, in terms of, how this journey has gone, or was there serendipity, or was it sort of a bit of both? I mean, were they looking to the future and had come up with this idea for lawyers being consultants, or has that something that's now just kind of naturally become a choice?
They've always had the belief, and we share that within the management team, that Setfords is primed to be a super brand, and I think that the way of becoming a super brand was having a USP, having something that differentiated us, and that was consultancy. So I think the two go hand in hand, really. The journey that we feel we're on, and the vehicle for that journey. So,
And do you think the rest of the market looks at Setfords and wonders what we're doing and why? How do you think we're perceived in the market among our peers?
I think that's very different now to it was 5-10 years ago. Absolutely. I think that there was probably an element of skepticism, because people inherently don't particularly like change, and it wasn't the way that law was delivered before. But I think that when they realise the momentum we've had, and the service we deliver, and our huge growth through the top 200, top 100, and consolidating our position in the top 100, and for us only looking to grow that, I think that scepticism has worn off, actually, because people realise that this is a serious way of doing business. That this is a real established way of giving lawyers the empowerment that they need to have their best career.
And that empowerment really is kind of wrapped up in a huge support package that we provide. As operations director, you must kind of live very close to that process.
Yeah.
What are the sort of things that we offer consultants when they join us?
Well, we want our lawyers to do the law. That's what we're here to do. We want lawyers to advise their clients and progress their matters whilst focusing on the law. And it's my job to ensure that everything else is taken away from them as much as they like. We're not prescriptive on how we do things, but there is an element of, we will give you the support that you need to do that. So admin support, secretarial support, a full accounts team, an incredibly experienced compliance team. They're all there for the key and sole purpose of servicing those lawyers and giving them that support they need.
We've been talking today about AI and how that might sort of change the legal industry and maybe even Setfords. Obviously, technology really comes into play with the sort of Setfords offer. What does that sort of comprise of very broadly?
what the lawyers all they need is an internet connection and a laptop. Essentially, we will look after everything else. We will give them access to our system remotely. We'll give them the telephonic.
Don't worry, I struggle with that word.
Okay, right. The telephone.
Yep.
Perfect. To be able to deal with their clients. We give them remote access on the telephone as well, so they can work from wherever they like. And it goes back to the point of giving the lawyers the freedom. We've had lawyers working in beautiful sunshine in glorious parts of the world because of the technology that we provide. All they need is an internet connection and a laptop. That has been a staple of the firm from the start of the consultant journey. But now, as is the Setfords way, and I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear this, we're not standing still. Right? For us, we're looking at what's next. What more can we do with technology to support the lawyers? That is always at the forefront of what we're doing. Support the lawyers, which means the clients get a better service.
Yeah.
That's our driver. And the technology, anything that we can integrate into this business to achieve those two things, which go hand in hand, that is always there. That's a main part of my role now is thinking, I suppose a constant question we're all asking ourselves, but me especially, is what next?
What next? Yeah, what comes next?
Yeah.
Well, look, we're sitting in Setfords' fabulous headquarters in Guildford.
Yeah.
A very plush office, superbly kitted out.
Mm-hmm.
Just paint a picture for us, if you will, back to those early days when things were just sort of starting out. What was Setfords looking like as a company back then?
I joined the business in 2010. I know I don't look old enough, but
I was going to say that, but you look like someone who people say that to you often.
Yeah, I get used to it. And we were actually less than 100 yards away in another part of Guildford, and it was incredibly different then. We still had the same vision and drive and the same goals, but operating in much smaller premises, far fewer people, far fewer consultants. And arguably I joined at that point once there'd already been an upward curve. I know that I think when Chris and Guy and a couple of others worked down in the Mount in Guildford, I think that you sort of one person had to stand up to let the other person out from their desk. It was a very sort of different environment. And then we went to Jenner Road, which was brilliant for a period of time, and now this is where we're at. And I think that we are settled here, and it, as you said, it is incredibly plush, and we all feel very fortunate to work here. But we're probably still going to be, if we have this conversation in 6-7 years' time, we'll probably be sitting in another wonderful office having the conversation.
Yeah, it feels like you mentioned the word super brand a little while ago, which, coming from a marketing background is something that really interests me. This does feel like a launch pad for that.
Yeah.
Just sort of briefly, what does that look like? Is that a sort of a Setfords global ambition, do you think? What's the aspirations?
The model and the way we've built it and what we've learned over 16 years of 17 years almost of business can be translated and taken to I don't see there's any country in the world that this couldn't be rolled out into in some format. Obviously, legal industry heavily regulated. Every country will have a nuance. Every country will have their own rules and regulations, but subject to fitting within that, we've built a scalable business that's for not just scalability for us to bring on more lawyers and providing this in England and Wales. It's scalability so that we could have thousands of lawyers in hundreds of countries doing what we do. There's no bounds to that, and I think that other countries will soon, if they haven't already, become more agreeable to the model and understanding of the model. And I think that for us, we think international expansion is both a certainty and probably a requirement for us to achieve that super brand status. So
yeah. Well, I mean, look, Mike, it's really interesting to hear about the past and a bit about the future. Let's keep that word super brand in mind. That feels like a great aspiration to aim for.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Setfords podcast.
No, thank you. It's been an honour.
It's been great to have you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cheers. You've been listening to the Setfords podcast, Open Matters. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you to all of our guests for taking part. Tune in next time when we'll have some more interesting discussion about law, Setfords, and working remotely.